Welcome back. So now we need to go to the next step, and that is to add the API controller, test-driven. And again, some of you might think now he's going to crack, now he's going to give up, because attributes, trying to unit test those, it's almost impossible. I don't think it is. We just need a little bit of reflection and a lot of time on Google, which I already spent for you guys, so thanks to me, right? I spent a lot of time on Google, and I found a way for us to do unit testing of this as well, so we know exactly what's going to be as attributes to these different controllers right here. Now, what is an attribute? In this case, if we go into the attribute, let's try and see where it actually is. When you read this, the attribute pretty much just indicates that a type and all derived types are used to serve HTTP API responses. So it's just a way for us to explain that these controllers right here can make HTTP responses in the code. At least that's what I've figured out so far. But how do we do a unit test and do this test-driven to add this API controller? We could, of course, just be lazy and just add it right here and say, we're done. But no. Lars is not going to be lazy. He's going to do a test-driven. So what I'm doing instead is I'm going to go down to the product controller test, and I made a test called uses API controller attribute. So let's figure out how we can actually test that. I jumped into Google a few times, and in the end, I found this link right here on how to use attributes in C#. And I think you should go and read that. You might know a little bit about it, but go and read it. There's a link in the description. I just scroll down because there's a lot going on right here, but it's about what attributes can do for you and how they work. And when you scroll down, what I need right now is figure out how I can get the attributes from a class to know what's actually in there using reflection. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to steal this line right here. I'll copy that. That's type info. That's just where I can go and get some actual information about the class I want to know some things about, in this case, the attributes. The class I want to kind of get from is going to be the product controller, the one we just built. So doing this, I can actually get type info about that product controller. Now, I've had some issues when I did this that I didn't want to import it. So I just want to mention that. So when I try to do the import right here, notice it doesn't help me actually. But if you go and do system.reflection up here, it should actually work. So let's do system.reflection, which is pretty much what it's doing for you anyway. So let's see if that's enough. And there we go. Now we can get the type. The type info right here explains that it needs to get from reflection type info as well, and there we go. You can also just make it a var, it's up to you. Now we have the type info, which gives us a lot of information about what's actually inside the actual class right here. So it's reflection. It's pretty much taking our class code and wrapping it into different sets of metadata so we can figure out what the class is all about. Good, so now we have that available. Let's try and go back to the example, and as I scroll down, there's another thing in here called get custom attributes, and with that one we can actually get all the different attributes that are available inside our code. So that's what I'm going to use in my case. And another thing I can see is I can get the name for the attribute by calling getAttribute.getType. Maybe we can use that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first just create a way to get that attribute right here. So I'll make a var right here and just call it attribute just to get started. There we go. Attribute. There we go. Equals. And then what I can do is I can say type info dot get custom attributes. That's an array dot. And then I'll actually do a first statement right here. So I'll say first a default to kind of find something in that list of attributes. And I'll just new line it right here so you guys can see it. Now we're not quite there yet. We need a bit more information. What we want to do here is just we're going to use a fat arrow lambda expression and say we want the attributes.getTypes.name. So this is a way for us to kind of figure out for each of the attributes on this, I'm looking for a specific attribute. And the attribute I'm looking for is the one called APIController attribute. That's the one I'm looking for. So I can say equals, and then I'm just going to put in the name. And this name right here is not something I just came up with. It's actually a name that's, if you go into the API controller, the order controller right here, the API controller will actually show you this is the name right here of the class. And that's why I have to put in that string right there. Now we've set up everything, and we just need to kind of test this to see if it runs. Let me just put a new line there. And then here I'm going to do just an assert and not null, because I don't expect the attribute to be null, right? Because if that's the case, I don't have that attribute on my class. I'll just add a small assert right here and a range above this, just like this, arrange. Now, with this in place, we're actually ready to run our unit test the first time. So let's just try and run it and see what happens. It should fail, luckily, and hopefully it should fail because, of course, this attribute is not available. So let's see what happens. And there we go, it's pending, and we have failed. Perfect. Now we need to add the attribute, and again, it should be very easy. We should actually just be able to put this into our actual controller right here, and then we should be done. So what I'll do is I'll put in the square brackets, and I'll just paste this in. But notice the attributes, you don't need to add the attribute in the end, so I can just put in the name APIController right here, and I'll just rerun my test, and hopefully now we're done. Hopefully, because now it knows it's an API controller, which pretty much means that this test is going to be golden.